The Rules Committee will come to order. We're here for consideration of the San Joaquin Valley Reliability Act and H.R. 1837. We're happy to welcome the distinguished chairman of the Resources Committee, Mr. Hastings. Welcome back. It's nice to see you. And we're expecting the ranking member of the Water Subcommittee. If she arrives, we will have her join you at the table. And very nicely, Miles doesn't count for quorum, so we have our friends in the minority. Ms. Napolitano, I just introduced you. Please join Mr. Hastings at the table here. We're happy to have you, and we now have a quorum, I'm happy to say. So please, as you know too well, feel free to enter any prepared remarks in the statement without objection. Will appear there, and we'd welcome your summary. So thank you for being back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and all the members of the Rules Committee. I do very much appreciate your holding this hearing, and I request a structured rule for the consideration of H.R. 1837, the Sacramento-San Joaquin Valley Water Reliability Act. This bill, passed out of the Natural Resources Committee, will bring jobs and water supply certainty, and that certainty is a key word, to the Sacramento and the San Joaquin Valleys of California. As you all remember, in 2009, families and farmers in California's San Joaquin Valley suffered devastating economic losses due to the government man-made drought. Federal regulations diverted over 300 billion gallons of water away from farmers to help a 3-inch fish. These draconian regulations that put the needs of fish above people resulted in hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland drying up and cost tens of thousands of jobs. In some communities, that cost was higher than 40% unemployment. Precipitation levels this year are at near record lows, and just last week the federal government told farmers that they would initially get only a fraction of their yearly water allocations. So another man-made drought in California is looming and could happen if Congress does not act. This is a comprehensive bill that would put an end to this correctable situation so that farmers have access to the water supply they need. It would restore water deliveries that have been cut off due to federal regulations and environmental lawsuits. It would ensure reliable water supply for people and fish, secure water rights, and save taxpayer money by ending unnecessary and dubious government projects. This bill would protect up to 30,000 jobs and would generate over $200 million to the federal treasury, and thus saving taxpayers' dollars. So I want to applaud my California colleagues who were heavily impacted by this. Obviously, Congressman Nunez, whose district was more heavily impacted, worked with others of my colleagues in the Central Valley, and this bill came out of committee, I might add, too, with bipartisan support. So I ask you for a structured rule on this, and look forward to having this on the floor tomorrow.
Ms. Napolitano, without objection, you're prepared. Remarks will appear in the record. We welcome your summary.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad to hear my chair of the committee is here. Although it is bipartisan, it's not totally bipartisan. We strongly object to the bill as it is. Correct. This bill, unfortunately, repeals existing state law as written for the use of water from San Joaquin River in the California Central Valley. And it affects all of California, and more specifically my area in Southern California. It reallocates water in a way that elevates agricultural uses above all other water needs, including municipalities, fisheries, and environmental uses. If and when enacted, would set unprecedented standard of state preemption, environmental disregard, and privatization of public resource for the benefit of a select few. The state legislature stated it best, and they're opposed, by the way. It is almost breathtaking in its total disregard for equity and its willful subjugation of the state of California to the whims of federal action. You know, in this body, we talk about less government, about government intrusion on the local entities. Well, this gives the federal government total control, puts it in the hands of Congress. And here we are saying on one hand we want less government, but let's give this one to the government. And by the way, this is totally structured to hit California. Despite amendments to the bill by the majority, it still seeks to make sweeping negative changes to the state's ability to manage water in the West. Amends the state constitution and undermines California's ability to manage its own resources. It repeals or overturns nearly 20 years or more of environmental protections under the Central Valley Project Improvement Act, the CVPIA, and the ESA, Endangered Species Act. It repeals San Joaquin Restoration Settlement Act. Contentious though it was, they did reach an agreement. The compromise widely supported by stakeholders, and it diminishes the fund for restoration. It completely eliminates co-equal goal of protecting environment and allowing water deliveries. It puts some of California's most lucrative, how would I say, general fund increase in one of the entities that brings California funding, and that's the fishing industry. And it puts a lot of their jobs at risk. In fact, they've been no salmon for prior to last year, 2 years before, there was no salmon catching fisheries able to expand their industry. Scope of the harmful provisions included in this legislation is matched only by the number of necessary provisions left out. The Subcommittee of Water and Power received over 34 letters with 275 stakeholders opposing the legislation. And Mr. Chairman, I'd submit this for the record. Elected officials, board of supervisors, water agencies, fishermen, environmental groups, state legislatures, Attorney General's office, Governor's office, and letters from the states of Colorado, Oregon, Wyoming, Montana, and last, not to mention the nonpartisan, 18 governor-appointed Western States Water Council. Severity of the legislation benefits to a small group, but not all of California, and certainly detrimental to many other states. My colleagues and I have filed amendments to address the glaring issues associated with the legislation, which will be offered on the floor, including subsidies reform, construction of new facilities, use of best available science. And we request that these amendments be made in order and included as part of the debate on this legislation. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Napolitano. It's always nice to see you, and you raise a number of important points here. I personally am supportive of the legislation, having spent a great deal of time with Mr. Nunez and the bipartisan San Joaquin Valley delegation. Okay, thank you. And let me just say that I'm hoping that this committee will do is exactly what you've requested, and that is make all those amendments in order. There's one amendment. I understand that Mr. Garamendi has, I think, 4 amendments. One of them has been interpreted to be an earmark, but I'm going to recommend that the committee make all of these amendments in order so that we'll be able to have a free-flowing debate on the House floor, and that everyone will have an opportunity to have their proposals considered. So I welcome that, and in light of the fact that we'll have this open and free-flowing debate, I think that it'll give us a chance to address these issues. So I have no questions. Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions either, and I appreciate your holding the hearing.
Congratulations on your great work on the floor.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I would like to make one comment. Sure. I have a young woman who's shadowing me today. Mackenzie Harmon is over there. Mackenzie did an internship in our office in Clemens and wanted to come and see how things work behind the scenes here.
Well, Mackenzie, it's not behind the scenes because we have full television coverage, but we're happy to have you here in person. And even though Ms. Fox is not that tall, there is a great big shadow for you to follow. I just want you to know that. So we appreciate your being here, and thank you for that. Mr. Hastings.
Mr. Chairman, in keeping with the same spirit, I don't have a shadow following me, but I do have a young intern that just began with me. Locke, show your hand over there. He's interning with us, and glad to have him.
Is he from Fort Lauderdale, or?
No, he's not, unfortunately. But anyway, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that the statement of administration policy.
Without objection, the administration's statement will appear in the record. Thank you very much. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Polis. Mr. Woodall. Mr. Nugent. Mr. Webster. Thanks to both of you for being here. We greatly appreciate it, and we'll look forward to having this considered on the floor tomorrow.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for.
Next, I see Mr. Garamendi is here and Mr. Nunez. So if the two of you would, oh my gosh, That was the most important message that you got here. This one I'm going to save. Thank you very much. I missed that. Gentlemen, nice to see you both. Without objection, any prepared remarks that you have will appear in the record, and we'll begin by welcoming the author of the legislation, Mr. Nunes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's great to be back up here. The last time I was here, you may recall numerous times that we tried to offer amendments to the bill under the previous majority, and all of those amendments were denied. And so I would just say, in an effort to be bipartisan, that I would urge you to accept all members of Congress's amendments that they have and make them in order so that we can debate them. Obviously, there may be some that maybe break House rules, but if they follow House rules, I think we should make them in order, and I would urge you to do that. And so I would urge you to treat all the members the same, unlike what we were treated in 2010 and 2009, which I think was a completely callous disregard for farmers, farm workers, and minorities. And I would urge you not to do that and to let all voices be heard.
Well, no one has demonstrated greater passion on this issue than you have, and you've certainly educated a lot of us on it, so we appreciate that, and thanks for your comments. Mr. Garamendi. Before you came in, I will say that I have just said that I'm going to encourage this committee to make your amendments in order. The only one that I'm not going to encourage to make in order is the one that is controversial and that is interpreted as an earmark. But you have, I think, 4 amendments, and so I'm going to ask that the committee make 3 of your 4 amendments in order. There are a total of 10, so we want to have every idea considered out there. So I just wanted to say that before you begin your testimony.
I'm not sure which one you refer to, the earmark, but I thank you for your generosity, and I think that is the proper way to go. Whoever's in charge, we ought to fully debate all of these issues. I assume that's the Kettleman City?
Number 6 is what I've been told. So you and I are on the same page here. You want me? I'll explain. Okay, let's see. Number 6 is would allow the Bureau of Reclamation to partner with local water groups on authorized and appropriated water storage projects in order to help meet water demands in California. So that's, it's your amendment number 6. And it's been interpreted by the committee as being an earmark. The other 3 I'm going to encourage to make an order, but that's the only one that...
Let me speak to that
really?
one. Apparently there's a technical amendment that's going to be authored on that same issue.
Is that one of your other 3 amendments?
No, it's not.
You know which one it is? Because if the committee follows my direction here and makes all of these amendments in order, is one of these amendments cover?
No, not my amendment. My amendment dealing with the Joint Powers Agency speaks to the Sites Reservoir. The language on the bill that came out of the committee would prohibit the federal government from involving in any way with Sites Reservoir. It's my understanding there's a technical amendment that the author of the committee was going to put forward to...
Oh, the chairman of the committee? You mean...
I assume so. I don't know that, but I assume there was a technical amendment.
Is there a manager? We're...
Which apparently McClintock has an amendment.
Oh, yes. The McClintock amendment number 10 is, in fact, the manager's amendment would make several technical and clarifying changes in the bill, so maybe that'll address your concern. The amendments that I'm going to encourage the committee to make an order would ensure that your Kettleman City amendment, I'm going to encourage that to be made in order, and then an amendment that would remove provisions of the bill that seek to decrease current supply of water to the Delta region, and the third would remove provisions of the bill that would seek to privatize a public resource and restores the Secretary of the Interior's discretion over water contract renewals. Those are the 3 amendments I'm going to encourage to be made in order. And if the McClintock manager's amendment does, in fact, address your issue that is included in your amendment number 6, I hope very much that it will.
Well, given the decision that you made, it's about the best that we could hope for in this particular amendment. I think he doesn't go quite far enough to deal with what I think is an important matter, and that is that the federal government be allowed to work with the Joint Powers Agency to move the Sites Reservoir forward. There's some limiting factors in his language, but it's certainly better than where we are today.
I hope that you all can work on that. It sounds good. So, again, we're going to be making all of the amendments in order to save that one.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, really? Just to reiterate that I think you're being very generous, being that that doesn't...
I hope the committee supports me on it. The committee hasn't said whether they're going to support me in this effort to make...
Well, I would urge the committee to support you in your effort because I made dozens
I want everybody to listen to that. So Mr. Nunes is encouraging a process that will allow these.
Because in the past, dozens of amendments were made by myself to rectify this problem in 2009 and 2010, and every single one of the amendments were denied. Every single
I
one.
think I remember that one.
I learned a long time ago, when it's going your way, time to excuse yourself and move on. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I intend to follow the lead of not only the young man from San Dimas, but I intend to also be there with you, Devin. I've watched you fight this fight for a number of years. I believe in people and achievement, and I understand the region. I've visited there several times. I've heard people talk about their future. They've chosen to be in California. They've chosen their land. They live there. It's the breadbasket of the world. It needs to be protected and utilized in a way that will benefit people. And I strongly identify with not only the work you've done over the last few years, but support the young chairman of the Rules Committee.
Thank you very much. Ms. Slaughter. Ms. Fox, you've already handled that. Mr. Hastings?
Gentlemen, can you tell me, do either of you have any concerns about the precedent that's being established, in the sense that the intervention of the federal government in this matter, where you already, if I'm not mistaken, have a bipartisan approved state plan? And am I correct that this bill calls for federal intervention? So if that is true, how does this fit with the general view of the majority with reference to states' rights? I hear it all the time, and are you worried that this precedent is overturning state laws?
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'm more than happy to discuss this. I think that I'm here encouraging for there to be an open and honest and clear debate on the floor of the House tomorrow. I'm here advocating for all of the amendments except for one were made by Democrats. So I'm here in a bipartisan manner encouraging for you to accept Mr. Garamendi's amendments and all the other amendments that have been made in order, and we can leave the rest to be debated on the House floor. But I clearly think that this becomes a matter of private property rights and people versus fish, that there's no scientific evidence that's out there that proves that the fish are being saved. So it really comes down to, in a nutshell, whether or not you want to throw 30 to 60,000 people out of work, or if you want to keep those people employed. I yield back.
That still does not answer my question of whether or not you have any concerns that this is federal intervention in what has been approved state plan.
So to bluntly answer your question, I do not have any concerns about that.
All right. So then you are not always for states' rights. That's all.
I am absolutely for states' rights as long as they do not impede on people's private property.
I understand. And then I gather from your last statement that the San Joaquin River must be different from the rest of the country, so that you don't have to worry about the protection of endangered species. We have classic examples ranging from the grizzly bear to the gray whale, the bald eagle, and countless other species that have been put on the endangered list that have recovered, at least in some respects. In my area, for example, the alligator was almost gone at one time. Now we have a new demon, the python, that we would hope that would be at least removed from the Everglades.
Well, the gentleman can count on my support to help him with his endangered species. The Congress wrote the Endangered Species Act. The Congress has the ability under the Constitution to change that act when needed. And I would be glad to help the gentleman with his problems in Florida. If he has legislation, I'm more than willing to help you navigate through that problem and help your folks stay working. And I just ask that you will help the folks that live in the San Joaquin and Sacramento Valleys to stay employed also during this time of tough economic times.
One final comment, Mr. Chairman, and that is, Chairman Dreyer, you commented that Mr. Nunes, that we didn't have anyone here that had any greater passion. I agree with you on this particular issue, but Dennis Cardozo comes almost as close. Just wanted that to be mentioned, not before John got here. Chairman, can you tell me something? I just am interested in I'm fascinated by the new technology. No one has said anything about it, and this is unrelated and not any gotcha involved in it. But what?
Oh, there never is.
Yeah, well, no, a lot of times I'm trying to get you.
You know, I know, but I'm just saying.
Trust me, I
know you're trying.
Yeah,
I know you're
right,
trying.
and I succeed occasionally, too. But that said, can you tell us, does that eliminate that big old box thing outside that is normally there? Is
Well,
that what it's doing?
You know, I want my technical expertise to be known here. These new cameras that I had a big delegation in here of the secretaries general from parliaments all over the world, and I was standing right in front here, and I said, this thing looks like R2-D2 to me. The camera does. So now I'm told that you look better with these new cameras. I haven't seen it, but I mean that's sort of the word circulating throughout. And the one thing, yeah, I know, but I'm just editorializing on what I've been told. That big old thing out there is gone, and they and I know the most pressing question is when will Mr. Solomon be returning? And Mr. Halpern has just climbed up there and measured, and to inform everyone, Mr. Solomon will be between that camera and the door, and right behind where our former Rules Committee staffer Jenny is sitting, we will have the guide that explains the setup here for people who don't know. Mr. Campbell and Mr. Madden and Mr. Pepper and Mr. Bowling and, of course, Mr. Moakley. In the heavens, looking down on all of us. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, if you're in a position to start making announcements like that, I mean, I was informed of that, so congratulations to Jason for being as lucky as he is. So, Mr. Bishop, Mr. Polis.
I just ask either one of you, both of you. I mean, what is the justification for kind of federally second guessing the San Joaquin River Settlement Act and going in kind of after the fact and changing it again? I mean, what has changed so that somehow this falls on those of us from Colorado and Texas and New York and all these other places to go in and do this?
Well, that's a great question, Mr. Polis, and I think I know that you tend to watch the budget very closely. But number one, there's not a biologist in America that can prove that salmon are going to return. So this was an agreement by private parties that was forced upon the Congress. The Congress put this agreement into effect, and the salmon spawned above the dam. So unless you're willing to tear the dam out, which this Congress was not willing to do, then in fact the salmon will not return. And so, but right now we are targeted to spend $21 million per fish, which comes out to over $1 billion of what the government is hoping to return on this investment, or hoping to invest into this investment of returning 500 salmon. And I don't think under today's austerity measures, when we're cutting defense, intelligence agencies, our men and women in uniform, we have problems in health care and Social Security and everything else that I'm sure you're aware of. I think the last thing we'd want to be doing is spending money on fish, especially when you're talking about into the billions of dollars. And so what this does is this actually increases waterfowl habitat and fish. It just basically the Congress says that the salmon are not going to be able to return, but we're more than happy to increase fish habitats.
But what's the reason that it's, me from Colorado, Mr. Hastings from Florida deciding this? Why isn't there just an effort among those that are party to the settlement agreement to update it for the new reality that you mentioned?
Well, because the settling parties, there actually has been a few settling parties who have submitted letters and want us to look into this, and they actually support this language. But that's a court decision, and I would just submit to you as you have a constitutional right under the Constitution and under the House of Representatives that if we feel the Congress dried up the river, the Congress can re-wet the river, and what I'm encouraging is for us to re-wet the river in a responsible way and not spend billions of dollars doing it when billions of dollars are needed elsewhere.
Well, so Mr. Garamendi, you want to address that as well?
Just a couple of things. Mr. Hastings asked an earlier question about preemption of state law. This bill overrides not only the California state law, but the California Constitution. And it supplants in California a federal edict about how water will be managed. And in California, all the water in this system is within the state of California. And so as a precedent, it has serious ramifications, and therefore the Western States Water Council has moved against this bill. Now, with regard to the San Joaquin River settlement, the Friant Dam unit of the Central Valley Project did dry up the San Joaquin River. Lawsuits and discussions, debates have been underway for 20 years before a settlement was reached. A court confirmed that settlement. The water districts, parties to the settlement, the federal government party to the settlement, state party to the settlement, all of the wildlife agency, state and federal parties to the settlement. This bill simply takes the settlement, throws it aside, and imposes a new law. I would guarantee that what will happen is unending lawsuits going forward. The underlying problem did not diminish, is not taken care of. I don't think that's in anybody's interest. We ought to try to solve problems, not create a whole new set of problems. That'll be another 20 years of debate, lawsuits. Good for the lawyers, if you happen to want that to happen, but it doesn't solve the problems that are there. The Friant water users, one of the major parties to this area, a public agency, is opposed to this. They don't think it's appropriate to change this settlement that took so long in coming. The settlement was, the federal law followed the settlement and simply enacted the settlement at the federal level and gave the federal government the power to do it. As to the cost, it's not known. Numbers have been tossed around. The numbers that's been cited here are without factual backing. We'll see what takes place. It'll be an interesting debate on the floor. There is no doubt, however, about federal preemption of the water system in California. The impact is extraordinary. 150 years of water law, state, federal, courts, suits up and down the state thrown off the table, and a new system imposed. It will be chaos for the next many decades.
Thank you, Mr. Garamendi. I think that this is a ironic situation where many of those who rail against federal involvement, generally speaking, are the proponents of federal micromanagement of California's water supply in this instance. I'm somebody who takes it on a case-by-case basis. I'm Jewish, but to paraphrase the New Testament, I think render under the states, let's do the states, and render under the federal, let's do the federal. I mean, you figure out where something makes sense. I think water, and I come from a state where water is very important as well. I do not think we would take kindly to people from New York and Florida and no offense, California, determining what we're doing with our water supply in Colorado. And I feel very uncomfortable being asked to make these decisions, having been elected by the people of the 2nd Congressional District, to contradict a settlement with multiple California parties and determine the future course of Colorado water. I would encourage those from the other side of the aisle that have at times spoken very passionately about over too much federal involvement in local decisions and trying to wheel back the federal government and supporting states' prerogatives to honor that in this case, because I think that's what this is a case is. Regardless of the merits of how it's decided in California, I don't know. I represent Colorado. I don't, these are not arguments that in my district I'm being asked about, nor have I researched, just as the 400 and some of us who aren't from California probably haven't looked into this matter. But I do feel uncomfortable. What's that? You're right. You guys have a lot. You're right. 300 and, what do you have, 52? 53. So. And clearly it concerns those members directly. But I do think that asking for federal involvement here to somehow come in on a white horse and fix this, could potentially make the matter worse. And I'll yield back the balance of my time.
I appreciate the gentleman from Colorado's paraphrasing of the New Testament, fairly loose paraphrasing, but I took his point, and I will say to the gentleman, I am one of those folks who rails out against federal involvement. I do not view it on a case-by-case basis as you do. I believe the 10th Amendment is a broad, not grant of power, but a reminder of the restrictions of power that should be on the federal government. I will tell you, Mr. Nunes, as someone who has spent a lot of time on this topic, I listened to Ms. Napolitano's testimony, and I was concerned. Talking about trampling of states' rights. And I went back to my staffer, Mr. Chairman, because I know we go through all these things ahead of time in the Rules Committee, and I'm wondering what in the world kind of information I've been given. Because I'm going through the Rules Committee print, and I'm assuming this is the current print of this bill, and line after line is Section 3402 of 106 Statute 4706, federal law, is going to be changed. And we go back here to 106 Stat 4708, federal law is going to be changed. And 106 Stat 4709, federal law going to be changed. Now, I don't know what Congresses have done in the past, and I don't know the background of this California agreement, but what I see in page after page of this is there are already federal laws on the books that appear to be responsible for an unemployment rate of 40% in parts of the valley. And the 10th Amendment is clear. We don't need to be involved in things that are states' rights, but from the testimony of some of the witnesses here today, folks have come to the federal government and said, please, please, please implement a solution for us. And a different Congress chose to implement that solution that led to a 40% unemployment rate. Can you tell me, Mr. Nunes, what the difference is between what Ms. Napolitano is telling me and what I believe to be true?
The gentleman is correct that every time there's been a change to California water law, it has been a state preemption because of the uniqueness of the federal and state projects operating together. But I want to get back to the more basic question here, and that is that there is the 10th Amendment is an issue here, but I would say the 14th and the 5th and the First Amendments are also important in this debate. And I would say that this committee 2 years ago was very good at quieting my First Amendment rights and the people that I represent's First Amendment rights. And so I find it a little bit outrageous that the gentleman next to me is trying to argue the facts when I am here trying to argue on his behalf for him to have the advantage to offer the amendments on the floor. So I would appreciate for you not to attack me when I'm trying to support you getting your amendments on the floor. And I would yield back.
Mr. Chairman, if somehow I offended you by speaking the truth, I'm sorry. But the facts are the facts, and if I might answer your question, sir, I'll be happy to.
Well, you were talking about litigation, Mr. Garamendi, and that's an issue that I'm concerned about, too. It frustrates me to no end that we try to find solutions to real problems that have real impacts on our constituents, and litigation stretches those solutions out, delays those solutions for sometimes decades. I have not yet reviewed all of the amendments that you have offered. Do any of those amendments go to curtailing the litigation problems that you believe may be forthcoming?
Yes, they would, in several different ways. Those sections that you read are changes in federal law that in their current form conform to the state laws and state water programs. In essence, what has happened over the years, the state of California, this project is entirely within the state. When the federal government started this project in the 30s, it conformed to the California water laws, state water rights laws, and other laws. And over the years, numerous changes have been made over time, each time conforming to the California law. This bill, in several ways, including the sections you read, flipped that over and forced the state to comply with the federal law as written in this bill. That's quite different. So while it speaks to federal law, understand that the bill flips it from state control to federal control. And therein lies the issue that the Western States Council, made up of 18 states, their water managers appointed by the governor, have said, well, wait a minute. We don't want that to happen because it sets a precedent that this could affect other states. Other states have a much different situation in that most of the water in the other western states flow through multiple states. That's not the case in California.
This is a fascinating issue to me. I didn't even know where the San Joaquin Valley was before I got to Congress. But in my constituency, back in the great state of Georgia, a state that has its own water problems, wholly unrelated to the kinds of challenges California is facing, we're on a first-name basis with the Delta Smelt. We're on a first-name basis. The challenges of farmers and agricultural workers in the valley has gone from the West Coast all the way over to the East Coast, such that my people feel an affinity, feel the pain, empathize with folks struggling to the point that where have we lost our way? Because it's not a matter of state law, it's a matter of federal law that we prioritize animal species above working families. I'd be happy to yield.
I thank my friend for yielding, and I just wanted to say that the time has expired on the vote that is downstairs, and there are just a little over 100 members who have not yet voted, and I was hoping that we might have a chance to report this rule out, but it appears that we won't. So if we're going to make sure that everyone is able to make the vote downstairs, I'd ask.
I have nothing more, Mr. Chairman. I would urge it.
Well, I mean, but other members may have something more, so it's not up to you to decide that. And Mr. McGovern may want to say something. So what I'm going to do is recommend, Mr. Woodall is in the midst of questioning, and so I'm going to ask that we recess and then reconvene at the end of the third vote, which is a 2-minute vote. We'll have debate on the motion to recommit and then another 15-minute vote. So if everyone could come back in after this vote and then the 2-minute votes that follow. So the committee will stand in recess. The Rules Committee will reconvene. We were in the midst of questioning for Mr. Nunez for our two witnesses. So, gentlemen, welcome back. It was wonderful to see you once again. Hope you enjoyed your time downstairs on the House floor. And Mr. Woodall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll be brief. Just going to the challenge from my friend from Colorado, Mr. Polis. I do think it's important that we be consistent. I look back at the history of federal intervention in the Valley, going back to 1986, and the requirement of all things that the state and the federal government must coordinate in this area. I would encourage my friend from California, Mr. Nunez, not to stop his efforts with this bill, but to continue to push forward and forward and forward to bring some much-needed balance to federal regulations, not just in the ESA area, not just in the fish and wildlife area, but across the board. I'd say to my friends who advocate for states' rights, if they want to bring forward the repeal of the 1986 legislation, I would support them on that today. A repeal of the 2009 legislation, I would support that today. In the interim, I'm persuaded this is the best we can do. But I want to say to you, Mr. Chairman, this is 2 days in a row that you have encouraged this committee to accept absolutely every single amendment, most of which are intended to substantially change the implementation of the underlying bill. And you have
Can I infer that you're going to be supportive of my request?
Mr. Chairman, any time that you say let the members vote, let the members vote, and it just means as Mr. Nunez opened his comments, that is a very different.
And what about times when I don't say that?
I will be silent during those times, Mr. Chairman. But in these times, I think we should celebrate them for what they are, and that is a very firm difference of opinion in the direction that we should take in this body, but the understanding that everyone deserves their voice to be heard, and I'm glad that we will be doing that tomorrow if your suggestion prevails. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Webster. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for being here. We'll look forward to what Mr. Woodall correctly describes as an opportunity to have these ideas considered on the House floor. So that'll conclude the hearing. And do we have enough members here? Yeah. The chair will be in receipt of a message. Excuse me, a motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move the committee grant H.R. 1837, the San Joaquin Valley Water Reliability Act as structured rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member on the Committee on Natural Resources. Rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. Rule makes an order as original text for the purpose of amendment and amendment in nature of a substitute consistent of the Rules Committee print 112-15 and provides that it shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against the amendment in the nature of a substitute. The rule makes an order only those amendments printed in the Rules Committee report. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated. The report shall be considered as read, shall be debatable if specified in the report equally divided and controlled by the proponent and opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, shall not be subject to demand for division of the question. Rule waives all points of order against amendments printed in the report. Finally, rule provides 1 motion to recommit with or without instructions.
You've heard the motion of the gentleman. Any discussion or amendment? Mr. McGovern.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciated the comments by Mr. Nunez saying he wants everybody to be heard. And again, I'm not an expert like some of my colleagues up here on California state issues, but maybe after tomorrow's debate, I might become more of an expert, so I might want to offer an amendment. And under the rule that you propose, I would not have that opportunity unless I submitted it in advance. So I want to give my colleagues an opportunity to vote on an open rule. So I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee grant H.R. 1837 an open rule so that all members have the opportunity to offer amendments to this bill on the floor. And again, we're dealing with a state issue here that most of us know not very much about, but we may be enlightened during the debate tomorrow, so I hope we can have an open rule.
You've heard the gentleman's motion. For the record, I'm happy that you won't be offering an amendment tomorrow. The vote occurs on the McGovern amendment. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no.
I ask for a roll call, Mr.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Sessions? No. Mr. Sessions? No. Ms. Fox? Mr. Bishop? Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Nugent? Mr. Scott? Mr. Webster? Mr. Webster? No. Ms. Slaughter? Aye. Ms. Slaughter? Aye. Mr. McGovern? Aye. Mr. McGovern? Aye. Mr. Hastings? Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Chairman.
There's another member here next to Mr.
Mr. Polis. Aye. Mr. Polis, aye.
And before I vote, how are Mr. Nugent and Mr. Scott recorded?
They are not recorded, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Nugent, no. Mr. Scott, no.
And I...
Mr. Chairman.
And I vote no, and
Mr. Chairman, no.
clerk report total.
4 yeas, 6 nays.
And the amendment is not agreed to. Are there further amendments? If not, the vote occurs on the motion of the gentleman from Dallas. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Pay the chair. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. And Mr. Bishop will be managing for the majority, and Mr. Polis for the minority. We don't expect another meeting this week, so I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you all very much for coming back. And here's the manager of the amendment, for the bill, and it's already taken care of. Yep. The committee stands adjourned.